Hello, everyone. Today our journey takes us to the scorching, dusty heat of ancient Egypt, a civilization marked by powerful pharaohs, monumental temples, and of course, the pyramids that even today defy time and human logic. But behind the glory of the monuments, the splendor of the Nile, and the legends that have crossed centuries, there was a reality that crushed the common citizen. Because although ancient Egypt is remembered as the cradle of eternal wonders, it was also the stage for a daily struggle so brutal that few of us would endure it. So before you get comfortable, hit the like button on the video and subscribe to the channel, the best place on YouTube to dive into stories that reveal the hidden side of history. Comment below where you're watching from and at what time. It's always fascinating to see this living map form in every video. Now, turn off the lights, feel the silence of the desert, and prepare to imagine what it would be like to spend a single day pulling ropes, breaking stones, and breathing dust. Let's embark together on this journey through ancient Egypt. You open your eyes as the first ray of sunlight penetrates the narrow window of your mud brick home. The heat already begins to creep in, even at this early hour. There's no time to lose in ancient Egypt. Life pulses to the rhythm of the great river, and each dawn is a gift from Ra, the sun god. Stretching out on the straw mat that serves as your bed, you feel your body still heavy from the previous day's work. Beside you, your family still sleeps, all together in the same room. The space is small, but cozy in its own way. Your house is simple: thick mud brick walls dried in the sun, a flat roof made of interwoven straw and reeds, and a packed earth floor. There are no glass windows, just small openings for ventilation, covered with light fabrics when the desert wind brings sand. The homes of common people in Egypt are modest, but efficient against the extreme heat. The thick mud walls keep the interior relatively cool during the scorching day and preserve warmth on cold desert nights. The furniture is minimal: a few sleeping mats, low stools, perhaps a simple table, and large ceramic jars for storing water, grains, and other essentials. Everything is practical, without unnecessary luxuries. You get up carefully so as not to wake the others. The workday begins even before the sun reaches its full splendor. There are no alarm clocks, just the instinct developed over years of following the same rhythm, synchronized with nature. Stepping out into the small courtyard in front of your house, you take a deep breath. The air is still fresh, carrying the scent of bread being baked in neighboring houses. This familiar aroma is the first embrace of the day, a comfort that remains unchanged for generations. Your village is waking up. Neighbors nod, children begin to run, women organize the day's chores. There's a strong sense of community here, where everyone knows and depends on each other. In a ceramic basin, you pour water from the jar that was fetched from the river the night before. The water is murky but precious. With it, you wash your face and hands, feeling the coolness that will soon be just a memory under the scorching sun. Hygiene in ancient Egypt is surprisingly important. Egyptians value cleanliness not only for practical reasons, but also for religious ones. To be clean is to be pure in the eyes of the gods, especially before prayers or rituals. You brush your teeth with a paste made of ashes and bitter herbs. The taste is strong but effective. Egyptians were among the first peoples to develop a form of toothpaste, although the sensation in the mouth is far from the refreshing mint of modern tubes. To comb your hair, you use a wooden comb with wide teeth. Men and women in ancient Egypt pay great attention to their hair. The wealthy wear elaborate wigs, but common people keep their hair natural, often shaved or very short due to the heat. Water is too precious for daily full baths. Instead, you wash with a damp cloth and rub your body with perfumed oils containing herbs. The oil not only cleans, but protects the skin from the relentless sun and bothersome insects. The scent of almond or castor oils mixes with the aroma of herbs, creating a fragrance that is distinctly Egyptian. It's not the sophisticated perfume from a modern bottle, but an earthy, natural combination that marks your presence. After cleaning, it's time to get dressed. Your clothing is simple: a shenty for men, a kind of short skirt tied at the waist, or a straight, simple dress for women, made of linen. The fabric is light and bright, perfect for the hot climate. Linen is the quintessential fabric in Egypt, made from the fibers of the flax plant, which grows abundantly on the banks of the Nile after the annual inundation. It is laborious to produce, but results in a breathable, durable, and cool material. You don't wear shoes inside the house, but to go out, you tie on simple sandals made of woven straw, or, if you have more possessions, of leather. Many people, especially the poorest, go barefoot most of the time. Looking down, your feet show the signs of a life of work. calloused, sometimes cracked by the dry heat. Sandals are reserved for special occasions or to protect feet from particularly hot or rough terrain. Your appearance is complete with a simple amulet you wear around your neck, perhaps a ceramic scarab or an image of one of the protective gods. These small objects are not just decorative but carry deep spiritual meaning. The amulet is your personal guardian, a tangible connection to the invisible world of the gods. You touch it briefly, muttering a quick prayer for protection during the day ahead. It's a gesture as natural as breathing. Now, with the sun already beginning to show its strength, it's time for the first meal of the day. In ancient Egypt, breakfast is not an elaborate meal. It consists mainly of bread, perhaps some seasonal fruits or vegetables, and a little light beer. Bread is the staple food par excellence. Made from barley or wheat ground on stones and baked in communal ovens, it has a dense texture and a strong flavor that little resembles the soft, airy breads of modern times. Ancient Egyptian beer would be almost unrecognizable to a modern drinker. Thick, murky, and low in alcohol, it is made from fermented bread and contains pieces of grain. It's more like a nutritious gruel than a party drink, but it provides essential calories and hydration. You drink your morning beer from a rough ceramic cup, feeling the grains between your teeth. It is simultaneously food and drink, an efficient way to nourish the body for the work that lies ahead. Even children consume it regularly. If it's harvest season, perhaps there are figs, dates, or melon to complement the meal. Fruits are precious, natural sweets in a time without refined sugar. Each bite is savored slowly, a small luxury accessible even to peasants. Onions are another common accompaniment, appreciated for their flavor and the medicinal properties Egyptians attribute to them. The strong smell lingers on your hands and breath, but no one minds. It's a familiar and comforting aroma. Fed and ready to face the day, you leave your home. The sun is already higher, and the heat begins to intensify. In the narrow village streets, life buzzes. Merchants arranging their goods, artisans working outdoors, children running in improvised games. Your work, like that of most common Egyptians, is tied to the land. If you are a farmer, you head to the fields bordering the Nile. If you are an artisan, you go to the communal workshop where you practice your craft. If you are a fisherman, you prepare for a day on the river. Regardless of your profession, the pace of work is dictated by the sun. The most productive hours are in the morning and late afternoon. During the most intense heat of midday, even the strictest supervisors allow a break in the shade. There are no wristwatches or smartphones to mark time. Instead, you orient yourself by the position of the sun, by the temple rituals that mark the hours with ceremonies and incense, and by your own body that intuitively knows the rhythms of the day. If you are a farmer, your work varies with the seasons of the Nile. There are 3 distinct periods: Akhet, inundation; Pered, planting and growth; and Shemu, harvest. Each has its own tasks and challenges. During the inundation, when the Nile overflows its banks between June and September, there is less agricultural work to be done. This is the time to build and repair tools, homes, and dikes, or work on community projects. In the planting period, you plow the rich silt left by the inundation. The plows are simple, pulled by oxen. The moist, fertile earth yields easily, but the work is physically exhausting. Bending your back hour after hour under the sun, sweat streams down your face as you guide the plow, leaving furrows in the dark earth. Your bare feet sink into the damp soil, a sensation both uncomfortable and comforting. This contact with the earth is almost sacred. Seeds, mainly wheat, barley, and flax, are sown into the furrows with precise movements, perfected over generations. There is no waste. Every grain is precious and represents the difference between abundance and scarcity in the coming months. After planting, there is constant irrigation. Using a shaduf, a type of balance with a counterweight that allows water to be lifted from the river to the fields, you spend hours moving water. It is monotonous work, almost meditative in its repetitive rhythm. The shaduf creaks with each movement, a sound that blends with the murmur of the water and the calls of other workers. This concert of labor is the soundtrack of Egyptian rural life, a melody as ancient as the Nile itself. During the harvest, the pace of work reaches its peak. Everyone works from dawn to dusk, cutting the ripe grains with wooden sickles inlaid with flint blades. Hands become calloused and often cut, despite experience. The smell of ripe grains fills the air, mixed with the dust raised by the work. It is an aroma that signifies life and continuity. A successful harvest is not only economic survival, but also a blessing from the gods, a testament to their benevolence. After the harvest comes threshing, separating the grains from the stalks. This is done by letting animals trample the ears or by beating them with flails. The wind helps separate the grain from the lighter chaff, a simple but effective method called winnowing. A significant portion of the harvest goes to taxes. The pharaoh's scribes meticulously monitor production, recording everything on papyrus. These literate officials are feared and respected. Their pen can mean prosperity or famine for a family. If you are an artisan, your day is spent in the communal workshop or in a corner of your own home, practicing the craft you probably inherited from your father. It could be pottery, weaving, carpentry, metalwork, or papyrus making. Artisans form an intermediate class in Egyptian society, neither common peasants nor privileged elite. Their specialized knowledge is valued and carefully passed down from generation to generation, often within the same family. If you are a potter, your hands skillfully spin the potter's wheel, transforming Nile clay into pots, plates, and jars. The wet clay slips between your fingers, taking shape almost as if it had a life of its own, responding to the touch inherited from your ancestors. The smell of damp clay is earthy and primitive. Once shaped, the pieces dry in the sun before being fired in simple kilns. Fire transforms malleable clay into durable ceramics, a metamorphosis that always seems to contain something magical. If you are a weaver, you work on a vertical loom, transforming linen into fabrics. The process is long. First, the flax is harvested. Then its fibers are extracted by retting in water, dried, combed, and finally spun into threads before even reaching the loom. The rhythmic sound of the loom is almost hypnotic, marking the hours with its constant cadence. Your hands move with automatic precision, interweaving the threads into patterns that can be simple for common clothing or complex for ceremonial pieces. For those who work with metal, mainly copper and bronze, as iron is still rare, the day is spent between the suffocating heat of the forge and the incessant clang of the hammer shaping the metal. It is work that requires strength, precision, and resistance to intense heat. The incandescent metal glows with its own light, almost supernatural in its transformation from ore to tool or weapon. There is something alchemical about this craft, a partnership between the artisan, the fire, and the minerals extracted from the earth's depths. If you are a carpenter, you work mainly with imported wood, as Egypt has few native trees large enough for construction. Cedar from Lebanon, ebony from Nubia, precious woods arriving by river on enormous rafts. The smell of sawdust mixes with sweat as you saw, carve, and plane. Your tools are simple but effective. Copper saws, chisels, planes, and awls. With patience and skill, they transform rough logs into furniture, boats, and doors. Regardless of your work, midday brings a necessary break. The sun is at its zenith, a relentless disk of fire in the cloudless sky. Even the most demanding supervisors recognize that working in this heat is unproductive and dangerous. You seek shade wherever you can find it, under a solitary tree, beside a wall, inside a makeshift shelter. The heat is almost tangible, an oppressive presence that makes the air shimmer. Breathing seems to suck fire into your lungs. It's time for the midday meal, similar to breakfast, but perhaps with the addition of some cooked vegetables, okra, lettuce, cucumber, and, if you are fortunate, a little dried Nile fish. Meat is rare for common people, reserved for festivals and special occasions. Fish is a staple food, especially for those living near the river. Dried and salted for preservation, it has a strong, distinctive flavor. Some species are considered impure for religious reasons, but most provide accessible protein for the population. While you eat, you chat with co-workers or family members. Conversations revolve around practical matters, the river level, the quality of the harvest, news from neighboring villages, the latest decrees from the pharaoh brought by royal messengers. There's no rush during this break. Time seems to stretch under the midday heat, creating a bubble of quiet in the middle of the workday. It's a moment to regain strength, but also for social connection, as important as physical rest itself. As the hottest hours pass, work resumes, now at a more moderate pace. The sun begins its descent to the west, and there is a gradual softening in the intensity of the light. It's as if nature offers a truce after the midday assault. In the late afternoon, with the day's work completed, you return home. Your body is tired, but there is satisfaction in productive fatigue. On the horizon, the sun sets in a spectacle of colors that transform the sky into an artist's palette. Intense oranges, reds, and purples. This is the time for the main meal of the day, usually shared with the entire family gathered. Sitting on mats on the floor or on low stools around a simple table, everyone eats from the same communal dish, using their fingers or bread as utensils. The meal is similar to previous ones in content, but a little more substantial. In addition to the omnipresent bread and beer, it might include a portion of vegetables cooked in a simple stew, seasoned with garlic, onion, and local herbs like coriander and cumin. The flavors are simple but comforting. The mild bitterness of the beer, the earthy taste of wholemeal bread, the natural sweetness of the vegetables. There is no refined sugar. Honey is the available sweetener, but it is too expensive for daily use among common people. Spices are used sparingly, more for their perceived medicinal properties than for flavor. Cumin, for example, is valued not only for its characteristic aroma, but because it is believed to aid digestion and ward off illnesses. During the meal, stories are shared. The elders speak of past times, of pharaohs who came and went, of exceptionally high or dangerously low floods. Children absorb these narratives that are at once entertainment and education. There are no books in your house. Writing is the domain of scribes, a specialized and almost magical knowledge. Wisdom is transmitted orally in stories, proverbs, and songs that carry the accumulated experience of generations. After the meal comes the moment of relaxation before sleep. As darkness deepens, oil lamps are lit, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The light is dim and flickering, nothing compared to modern electric lighting. The oil used in the lamps, usually castor or sesame, produces a yellowish light and a characteristic smoky smell. It is expensive and inefficient lighting, so it is used sparingly. Many families prefer to synchronize their rhythm with the sun, sleeping shortly after nightfall. Nights are for storytelling, small manual tasks like sewing or tool repair, simple games like Senet, an ancient board game, or simply talking. There's no television, smartphones, or social media. Entertainment is fundamentally social and interactive. Music also has its place on Egyptian nights. Simple instruments like reed flutes, small harps, and improvised drums accompany traditional songs. Melodies are passed down from generation to generation, without written scores. You observe the stars through the doorway, a carpet of shimmering lights against the black velvet of the desert sky. Without light pollution, the night sky of ancient Egypt is spectacular, revealing constellations that Egyptians associate with their gods and myths. For Egyptians, the night sky is not only beautiful but deeply significant. The stars are visible manifestations of souls who have completed their journey to the afterlife. Observing them is a form of communion with ancestors and with the gods themselves. When tiredness finally sets in, you retire to your sleeping mat. There are no soft mattresses, feather pillows, or cozy blankets. Your rest is more Spartan, a mat on the dirt floor, perhaps a curved wooden support as a pillow. These wooden or stone pillows, though they seem uncomfortable by modern standards, are designed to keep the head elevated and cooler, as well as to protect the elaborate hairstyles that some Egyptians maintain. Comfort is secondary to functionality. As you fall asleep, the sounds of the Egyptian night filter in. The distant call of nocturnal birds, the croaking of frogs on the banks of the Nile, the occasional howl of a jackal in the desert, and the soft murmur of conversations that gradually quiet down as the village falls asleep. The rhythm of the seasons profoundly marks life in ancient Egypt. Unlike the 4 seasons of the temperate world, Egypt experiences 3 distinct seasons, all defined by the behavior of the Nile. The vital artery of civilization, Akhet, the season of inundation, transforms the landscape. The river overflows its banks, covering the fields with mineral-rich water and silt. Villages become temporary islands, connected by dikes and boats. It is a time of less agricultural work, but increased activity in construction and repair. During the inundation, the world seems liquid. The boundary between land and water dissolves, and the horizon becomes a mirror reflecting the sky. There is a strange beauty in this transformed landscape, an annual renewal that seems to recreate the myth of the world's creation, emerging from primordial waters. The smell of the inundation is distinctive: fresh silt, abundant aquatic life, decaying vegetation. It is the aroma of fertility, the promise of future harvests. But it also brings swarms of mosquitoes and the danger of snakes and crocodiles displaced by the rising water. Pere, the season of growth begins when the waters recede, leaving behind a renewed earth covered by a layer of rich black silt. It is the time to plow, sow, and cultivate, making the most of the fertility left by the river. Green dominates the landscape during Pere. Fields of barley and wheat ripple with the breeze. Palm trees and sycamores offer welcome shade. Wildflowers dot the riverbanks with vibrant colors. It is Egypt in its most exuberant and living expression. Shemu, the season of harvest and drought, sees the land gradually harden under the relentless sun. It is a time of intense labor to ensure that none of the precious harvest is lost, followed by the anxiety of waiting for the next inundation. During Shemu, the heat is oppressive. The earth cracks, vegetation yellows, dust rises with the slightest wind. The contrast with the exuberance of Pere could not be greater. It is an annual reminder of the fragility of life in the desert without the blessing of the Nile. This annual repetition of seasons is more than a climatic phenomenon. It is the fundamental pulse of Egyptian civilization, determining not only agricultural cycles, but also religious festivals, tax obligations, and even the measurement of time. Religion permeates all aspects of Egyptian life. It is not a separate compartment of existence, but rather the lens through which all reality is understood. The gods are present in every aspect of daily life, from sunrise to sunset. You begin your day with a small prayer before a simple household altar, perhaps just a niche in the wall with a rustic statuette representing a familiar god. There is no separation between the sacred and the mundane. The gods are part of the family. Egyptian deities are numerous and multifaceted. Some, like Amun-Ra, Osiris, and Isis, are widely worshipped. Others are local deities, important only in certain regions. Each has its own domain, personality, and associated myths. The gods are not distant, abstract entities. They have very human qualities. They love, fight, feel jealousy, make mistakes. This proximity to the human makes them more accessible, more present in daily life. Ra, the sun god, is particularly important. His daily cycle across the sky, followed by his nocturnal journey through the underworld, is the basic rhythm of existence. When you look at the sun, you are contemplating a visible deity. Manifested directly in the world, Osiris, god of vegetation, death, and resurrection, personifies the annual cycle of the Nile. His story, torn apart by his brother, set and reassembled by his wife Isis, reflects the annual death and rebirth of the land with the flooding and receding of the river. Isis, the divine mother, is particularly beloved by common people. Wife of Osiris and mother of Horus, she represents protective magic, maternal love, and fidelity. Pregnant women, or those with young children, often wear amulets with her image. In addition to the great gods, there are household deities and protective genii who specifically care for homes, families, and villages. Bes, for example, is a dwarf god who protects the home, especially during childbirth and early childhood. If you are enjoying this journey, comment here. Would you dare to work even one full day in the quarries that built the pyramids? Temples are the center of official worship, but common people rarely enter their most sacred areas. These spaces are the domain of priests, who perform daily rituals of offerings, purification, and recitation of sacred texts. During religious festivals, however, statues of the gods are brought out in procession, allowing common people a glimpse of their deities. These are moments of great emotion, when the barrier between the mundane and the divine seems temporarily to dissolve. Religious festivals are also work holidays and occasions for celebration. There is music, dancing, special food, and often more beer consumption than usual. It is a time of collective joy, when social hierarchies seem slightly less rigid. The belief in the afterlife is fundamental for Egyptians. It is not just for the wealthy who can afford elaborate tombs. Even common people have expectations of a continued existence after the body dies. To ensure this post-death survival, certain funerary rituals are necessary. The body must be preserved through some form of mummification, although the most elaborate techniques are reserved for the elite, equipped with protective amulets and accompanied by offerings. You save small objects throughout your life: beads, amulets, perhaps a bronze mirror or a particularly good tool, to be buried with you. They are not treasures comparable to those of pharaohs, but they are your precious possessions for the journey beyond. The idea of judgment after death is universal. You believe your heart will be weighed against the feather of truth by the goddess Mat. A heart heavy with bad deeds means condemnation. A light heart like the feather ensures passage to eternal life. This belief profoundly influences daily behavior. Living in accordance with Mat, the concept of order, balance, and justice, is not just an abstract ideal, but a practical necessity to ensure a good passage to the afterlife. The pharaoh occupies a unique position in Egyptian religion. He is not just a political ruler, but an intermediary between the gods and humans, responsible for maintaining Mat through appropriate rituals and just governance. He is divine, son of Amun-Ra, For the common person, the pharaoh is an almost mythical figure, rarely or never seen personally. His presence is mediated through statues, temple reliefs, and decrees read by officials. He is simultaneously distant and omnipresent. The politics and administration of Egypt are centralized and hierarchical. At the top is the pharaoh, whose orders flow down through a complex bureaucracy of viziers, provincial governors, nomarchs, scribes, and tax collectors. Scribes are particularly important in this system, as bearers of hieroglyphic writing, a rare and prestigious skill. They record everything: harvests, taxes, population censuses, royal decrees. The scribe's pen is as powerful as the soldier's sword. Taxes are collected mainly in kind, a portion of the harvest, artisanal products, or mandatory labor on state projects such as temples, palaces, or most notoriously pyramids. There is no standardized currency. Egypt operates on a bartering system. This mandatory labor, called corvée, is an obligation that falls upon all common families. For a few weeks each year, adult men must work on state projects, building and maintaining irrigation canals, roads, and monuments. Despite the authoritarian nature of the government, there is room for some local autonomy. Villages resolve their own minor disputes through councils of elders. Only more serious cases or those involving multiple communities are brought to royal officials for judgment. This local autonomy is pragmatic in such a vast kingdom with limited communications. Egyptian society is highly stratified, with limited social mobility. At the top are the pharaoh and his family, followed by the elite of priests, government officials, and military. Below come scribes and specialized artisans, then peasants, and at the bottom a small number of slaves. You were probably born into the same social class in which you will die. Although there are stories of people who rose through exceptional talent, mainly scribes who demonstrated remarkable administrative skills. These are rare exceptions that prove the rule women in ancient Egypt enjoyed surprisingly broad rights for an ancient society. They could own property, initiate divorces, testify in court, and even conduct business. In practice, however, most common women focused on domestic and agricultural tasks. In your home, women are responsible for grinding grains, preparing food, weaving fabrics, caring for children, and maintaining the household. They work as hard as men, but in different and complementary spheres. Children begin to work early, taking on age-appropriate responsibilities as early as 5 or 6. Boys generally follow in their father's professional footsteps, learning by observation and practice, not in formal schools. Formal education is reserved mainly for future scribes, a path available only to boys from families with some resources or connections. Training is rigorous, including memorization of hundreds of hieroglyphs and years of calligraphy practice. For most children, learning happens informally. Girls learn household tasks from their mothers and other female family members. Boys accompany their fathers to the fields or workshops, gradually taking on more complex tasks. Marriage occurs early by modern standards, often in adolescence for girls, and in their early 20s for boys. There is no formal religious ceremony. Marriage is essentially a social and economic contract between families. The choice of partners is rarely left entirely to the young people. Parents and relatives negotiate appropriate unions, considering practical factors such as resources, health, and family compatibility. Romantic love, though celebrated in poetry, is secondary to practical considerations. Once married, the ideal is to establish one's own home, though often close to their families of origin. In times of economic hardship, it is not uncommon for several generations to share the same dwelling. Families tend to be large, with many children. Infant mortality is high. Approximately 1/3 of children do not reach adulthood. Having many children is not only emotionally desirable, but economically necessary to ensure support in old age. Childbirth happens at home, assisted by experienced midwives and accompanied by rituals to invoke the protection of goddesses like Taweret and Bez. It is a moment of extreme danger for mother and child, surrounded by medical and magical practices to increase the chances of survival. Newborn children are wrapped in linen strips, not unlike mummies. Protective amulets are tied to their wrists and ankles. The first bath is accompanied by incantations to ward off diseases and bad luck. If a child survives the vulnerable early years, they are welcomed with joy into the community. The laughter and play of children are constant sounds in Egyptian villages, a welcome counterpoint to the arduous adult work. Toys are simple: cloth or wooden dolls, miniature animals carved from wood or modeled in clay, balls made of woven papyrus. Games include chase, swimming in the Nile, always with caution due to crocodiles, and imitations of adult activities. As children grow, expectations increase. By 7 or 8 years old, they already contribute significantly to the family economy. By 12, a girl may be responsible for much of the domestic work. A boy may work in the fields almost like an adult. Health and medicine in ancient Egypt are a fascinating mix of practical observation, superstition, and magic. For small, everyday ailments, each family has its own remedies, passed down through generations. A headache might be treated with an herbal poultice tied to the forehead. A burn receives honey, known for its antibacterial properties. Muscle aches are relieved with aromatic oils massaged into the affected area. For more serious illnesses, there are doctors, a highly specialized profession in Egypt. They are trained in houses of life, institutions associated with temples that function as centers of medical, religious, and magical knowledge. Egyptian doctors are surprisingly advanced in some areas. They know basic anatomy, can treat fractures with splints, perform simple surgeries, and have an extensive pharmacopoeia of medicinal plants, minerals, and animal products. However, the cause of diseases is often attributed to evil spirits or divine displeasure. Thus, medical treatment is generally accompanied by incantations, amulets, and offerings to the appropriate gods. When you fall ill, the first recourse is home remedies. If these fail, a local healer might be consulted. Only for truly serious cases, and if you can afford it, would a trained physician be called. Life expectancy is low by modern standards. Reaching 40 years old is considered a full life. Reaching 50 is a special blessing from the gods. Infectious diseases, accidents, and childbirth complications are the main causes of death. Old age, when achieved, brings respect. Elders are valued for their accumulated wisdom and experience, holding positions as advisors in the family and community. Caring for elderly parents is both a practical obligation and a religious duty. Communication in ancient Egypt relies mainly on the spoken word. Messages are transmitted by messengers, announcements are made by heralds in the markets, and news travels at the pace of people walking or, at best, boats sailing the Nile. The Nile is the main artery of communication, allowing boats to transport people, goods, and information along its course. It is much more efficient than traveling by land, especially for long north-south distances. Land roads are few and rudimentary, often just worn paths from constant use. Traveling by land is slow, tiring, and potentially dangerous, especially in desert regions where bandits and wild animals pose real threats. For most common people, the known world extends only to the next large town. Traveling beyond one's home province is rare. Going to the capital to see the pharaoh's palace would be the adventure of a lifetime. However, Egypt is not isolated. Foreign merchants bring not only goods but also stories from distant lands. Through them, you hear about the Hittites to the north, the Nubians to the south, and other civilizations beyond the known horizon. The climate of Egypt shapes all aspects of daily life. The intense heat of the day forces a work rhythm that starts early, pauses during the hottest hours, and continues until nightfall. It is a necessary adaptation to the relentless environment. The almost total absence of rain means that all agriculture depends on the annual inundation of the Nile. This dependence creates a deep respect for the river, which is not only a source of water but the very foundation of Egyptian civilization. The desert is always present, a constant frontier reminding one of the fragility of life. Just walk a few miles beyond the cultivated lands to find a hostile world of sand, rock, and relentless sun, the red land, in contrast to the fertile black land of the Nile Valley. Sandstorms are a seasonal threat, especially during the 50 days of the Khamsin, a hot, dry wind that blows from the desert in spring. When these winds arrive, you close all openings in your house and pray for them to pass quickly. During these storms, the air becomes dense with fine particles that penetrate everything: eyes, nose, mouth, clothes, food. The landscape disappears under a yellowish veil, and the sun becomes a pale, diffused disk. It is as if the world is being erased. Nights in the desert bring a dramatic contrast. The scorching heat of the day gives way to a surprising cold. This daily thermal amplitude is another adaptation your body needs to make, moving from one extreme to another in a matter of hours. Insects are constant companions, especially mosquitoes near the river. There are no modern repellents. You use aromatic oils on your skin and burn certain herbs to ward them off, with limited effectiveness. Fine fabric nets over sleeping areas offer some protection. Scorpions and snakes pose real dangers, especially in adobe houses that offer perfect hiding places. You learn early to shake out sandals and clothes before wearing them, and to check dark corners with a stick before reaching into them with your hands. Domestic animals are an integral part of daily life. Cats are particularly valued, not only as pets, but as essential protectors of granaries against rats and snakes. Their presence is both practical and spiritual, associated with the goddess Bastet. Dogs guard homes and aid in hunting. Donkeys serve as pack animals. Cattle, goats, and sheep provide milk, meat on special occasions, and hides. Ducks and geese are more common than chickens. Each animal has its role in the delicate balance of subsistence. Leisure exists, even in a life of hard work. On religious festival days, there are dances, music, and games. On ordinary evenings, there are conversations, storytelling, and board games like Senet and Mayhen, which combine strategy with elements of chance. Music is an essential part of celebrations. Instruments like harps, flutes, drums, and sistra, a type of sacred rattle, accompany songs that can be religious, celebratory, or simply entertainment. There is no musical notation. Melodies are learned by ear. Dance varies from formal, ritualized movements in religious contexts to more spontaneous and energetic expressions at community parties. It is not just entertainment, but also a form of emotional expression, and in some cases, a practice with religious significance. The Nile offers refreshing recreation during the hot months. Swimming is a common skill, learned from childhood, though always with caution due to crocodiles. Boat rides, fishing, and simply sitting on the bank to enjoy the breeze are simple but precious pleasures. Board games are surprisingly sophisticated. Senet, the most popular, is played on a 30-square board with pieces moved according to the throw of sticks or bones, precursors to dice. It is believed to also have religious significance, representing the soul's journey. For children and young adults, impromptu athletic competitions are common. Races, wrestling, ball games. These are not just fun, but also practical training for life and, in the case of boys, possible future military service. Hunting and fishing are not just economic necessities, but also forms of recreation, especially for men. Fishing with harpoons or nets in the Nile combines utility with the satisfaction of skill. Hunting in marshy areas using boomerangs to down birds is both sport and food procurement. Local markets are centers of social interaction as much as commerce. Vendors and buyers negotiate animatedly, exchanging not only goods but also news, gossip, and opinions. The skill of bargaining is valued and developed early. Without standardized money, trade operates by direct exchange. A pot of beer might be worth 2 loaves of bread. A large fish might be traded for a handful of onions. The value of things is fluid, determined by need, availability, and negotiating skill. For more valuable items, precious metals like copper or silver might be used, weighed on scales. These are not coins, but simply metal by weight, a system known as the deben, where 1 deben equates to approximately 91 grams of copper or silver. You rarely deal with precious metals in everyday transactions. For most common people, the daily economy is one of subsistence and direct exchange. Only specialized artisans, merchants, or officials would receive payments in metal. Information travels slowly. News from the capital might take weeks to reach distant villages, passing by word of mouth, often distorted in the process. Official decrees are carried by the pharaoh's messengers and publicly read by local scribes. Without newspapers, television, or the internet, your knowledge of the world depends entirely on first-hand accounts or retold stories. The reliability of this information varies enormously, mixing facts, rumors, and frankly, fantastic elements. This limitation of information profoundly influences your worldview. The known universe is much smaller but also more detailed in your immediate locality. You know every inch of your village, every variation in the soil of your fields, every mood of the stretch of the Nile that passes through your lands. At night, gazing at the stars, you see not just points of light, but a celestial geography populated by gods and spirits. The sky is a divine map, as real and significant as the earth beneath your feet. There is no separation between the natural and the supernatural. Both are aspects of the same reality. This integration between the mundane and the sacred permeates every aspect of Egyptian life. When you plant seeds, you are not just performing an agricultural task, but participating in an act that echoes the resurrection of Osiris. When you mold clay, you evoke the creation of man by divine hands. The relationship with time is also profoundly different. Without clocks, time is not divided into precise units to be saved or spent. Instead, it flows to the rhythm of natural phenomena, the movement of the sun, the phases of the moon, the annual inundation of the Nile. This perception of time is simultaneously more cyclical and more immediate. The distant future is hazy and largely irrelevant, except in the religious sphere, the afterlife. The past is preserved in oral tradition, not in precise records accessible to everyone. The present, on the other hand, is vividly real and absorbing. Without the constant distractions of modernity, you are deeply present in every task, every conversation, every sensation. This mindfulness is not a deliberate spiritual practice, but simply the natural way of existing. As the years pass, your body shows the signs of a life of physical labor under the relentless sun. Your skin becomes prematurely tanned and wrinkled. Your hands develop permanent calluses. Your teeth wear down from the rough bread containing stone particles from the mills. Health problems gradually accumulate. Joint pains, respiratory issues from constant dust, diminished eyesight. There are no glasses for tired eyes, no surgeries for worn joints, no modern medicines for chronic pain. If you survive into old age, something many do not, your social position generally improves. Elders are respected for their accumulated experience and wisdom. Your role shifts from physical laborer to counselor, storyteller, and guardian of death when it comes, is faced not as an absolute end, but as a transition. You have prepared for this moment throughout your life, accumulating knowledge of the necessary rituals, acquiring protective amulets, perhaps even saving for modest aspects of mummification. Your children and relatives will perform the appropriate funerary rituals within their means. Your body will be treated with oils and natron for basic preservation, wrapped in simple linen strips, and accompanied by a few personal belongings for the journey beyond. Grief is expressive, audible lamentations, tearing of garments, covering the head with dust. But it is also limited in time. Life must go on, and the balance of Maat must be maintained. Your memory will live on for a few generations, through stories told by those who knew you. And so, in the eternal rhythm of the Nile, life continues. Children are born, grow, work, age, and die, always under the same bright sky, always on the banks of the same generous river, always in the shadow of the same ancient mountains and monuments that seem to defy time itself. This is the Egypt of the pharaohs, not the Egypt of history books with their lists of dynasties and dates, nor the Egypt of Hollywood movies with their exaggerated exoticism, but the Egypt lived, breathed, and felt by millions of common people over millennia. You have experienced this for a few moments, through words and imagination. Now, returning to your reality, perhaps you see your own world with slightly different eyes, more aware of extraordinary modern conveniences, more attentive to the natural rhythms that still influence us, more curious about the anonymous lives that constitute most of human history. The true wonder of ancient Egypt is not its monumental pyramids or its golden treasures, but its remarkable continuity and resilience, a civilization that flourished for more than 3,000 years on the banks of a single river, creating beauty, meaning, and community in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. When we think of Egypt today, we often focus on the pharaohs and their tombs, on the monuments and treasures. But the true heart of that civilization was people like you, farmers, artisans, mothers, fathers, children, living their lives day after day, facing the relentless sun, celebrating small joys, enduring inevitable hardships. They did not know they were building one of the most enduring and influential civilizations in human history. They were just living, loving, working, and dreaming, exactly as we do today, under the same sky, under the same stars, sharing the same essential humanity that transcends time and space. So, the next time you turn on the tap for instant clean water, remember how precious every drop would be to an ancient Egyptian. When you switch on a light, think of the deep darkness of Egyptian nights, illuminated only by flickering oil lamps, and perhaps in a quiet moment under a starry sky. You can feel a connection to those distant people who gazed at the same constellations and wondered about the same eternal mysteries of human existence. For in the end, we are not so different after all. If this immersion surprised you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Every week here we reveal that history is much harder and more fascinating than books usually show.